Hello and welcome to another episode of Life Stuff 101. This is day 16 of the series of mini episodes as part of the Challenging Times Self-Care Challenge. My name is Mio Yokoi. I work as a registered psychotherapist in Toronto, Canada, and also as a coach and supporter to striving, highly sensitive folks everywhere. Before we begin, I'd like to make sure to mention that what I share on this podcast is for general information purposes only and not meant to be specific advice. And for personalized help, questions, or concerns you may have, please consult your doctor or appropriate medical or mental health care provider. Welcome to day 16 of the Challenging Times Self-Care Challenge. The goal of this podcast is to inspire folks to take care of mental health on an ongoing basis, and this time, more than ever, is a crucial time to do so. And these self-care challenge episodes are meant to give you a little something to add a little bit of structure to your day to help with self-care. It's my hope that by building in some time for self-care right now might help to support your emotional and mental health during this time. Or even if these prompts serve as just a distraction for a few minutes in your day, I hope that can be of help too. And I also want to make sure to mention in each one of these challenge episodes that this is a really challenging time for all of us. Just getting by moment to moment, day to day, minute by minute, in and of itself is a lot. These self-care prompts are here to support you. So this challenge isn't about productivity, it's about taking care of you. And if you'd like to be notified when each of these episodes are uploaded, you can either subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can also go on over to lifestuff101.com/challenge, which has a list of every episode. So before we get into day 16 of the challenge, the day 15 challenge prompt was, identify 3 things that can help to ground you. During this time when we might all have some opportunities to be thinking and feeling a lot about all the different things that are going on in each of our individual lives, if we're not paying attention, we might find that we're concentrated very internally, so maybe too much in our heads. The tricky thing, especially during times of crisis and intensity, is that being too much in our thoughts can potentially cause some psychological distortions and difficulties. And we ourselves may not always be the best judge to know if we may have psychologically tipped into some potentially challenging areas. While I do suggest and believe that it's helpful to be using a number of the tools in our self-care toolkit, one of the ways we can also take care of ourselves is to keep track of our thoughts and feelings. It's like regularly taking a temperature on our mental health. For instance, it can be helpful to try and notice if there's been too much thinking that you've been doing, especially if you're noticing that you've been thinking about the same kinds of thoughts over and over again. And if you're noticing that you have one thought or a number of similar thoughts that you keep running over and over in your head, and even noticing that that's been going on for a while, this would be potentially a good time to try some of those grounding exercises. And if you're noticing that you're not taking very deep breaths on a regular basis, or that you're noticing and identifying that you're feeling quite stressed and anxious, that's also a good time to be able to utilize some of the grounding exercises that we talked about. And lastly, it's good to make sure to keep in touch with the trusted folks in your life because they might also be able to give you feedback on perhaps some of the things that you're thinking and feeling. And if they're expressing some concerns about some of the things that you're thinking about, the grounding exercises could come in handy. You might also consider talking more about some of the thoughts that you're having with those same trusted people in your life, or perhaps reaching out to a mental health care professional. I'd really like to know how you made out with day 15 of the challenge. You can find me on Twitter at LifeStuff101pod, on Instagram at LifeStuff101podcast, or on the website at LifeStuff101.com. Now it's time to get into day 16. And today's self-care prompt is, how's your nutrition been? The last full-length episode of Life Stuff 101 is with Debbie Brady, and she and I spoke about watching out for depression in a crisis. And the 2 specific suggestions Debbie made for self-care was 1, to make sure to get in regular movement, and the other was nutrition. Now, I know from my own personal experience that nutrition can make a big difference in overall health, but also in a big way, mood and mental health too. But food is so complicated because we all have to eat, but then we all have our individual relationships with food. So for instance, when it comes to me personally, I love good food. And what I would consider good food is the stuff that tastes really good, which is not always good, healthy food. These past few weeks, since we've been self-isolating, I've been thinking about food a lot. And I've been thinking about it in terms of what we need to get during the big grocery shop, or what I have access to right now in my pantry, or what I don't have access to, what I can make for the next meal, what restaurant I wish I could be eating at, certain meals I wish I could be having, recipe research based on the ingredients I have on hand. It goes on and on and on. So I'm thinking about food a lot, and while I enjoy this process, it's also been something that I've been thinking about a lot during self-isolation. And I'm also eating way too much and much less healthy than I'm used to. Since food is my go-to when it comes to self-soothing, I've been indulging in some sweet and fatty snacks than usual. And while I know that it'd be best for me not to have sugar, I do experience it as comforting in the moment, and it's one of the things I'm finding right now that's reliable as a momentary pick-me-up. However, for me personally, I know that my joints and my muscle pain flare up when I eat sugar. I also notice the energy crashes and the cravings when I try to cut back. For me, sugar is some powerful stuff. I mention all of this because whether it's sugar, salty things, or processed foods, especially as we're going through this pandemic situation, making better nutritional choices will not only support us in our physical health, it will also support us in our mental health as well. Of course, I'm not a nutritionist, but a quick online search for how does nutrition affect mental health will pull up over 153 million results, with the first result being an article from Harvard. So nutrition does affect our mental health, and it's actually quite important to support our mental health. And with that in mind, the day 16 of the self-care challenge is, how has your nutrition been? And here are your steps for today's challenge. Step 1. Set aside 10 minutes today to completing today's self-care prompt. Step 2. Before beginning, take 3 slow, deep breaths. Step 3. Take some time to reflect on how your nutrition habits may have changed. And answer these questions. I would suggest writing them down or making note of them somewhere. And answer these questions. A. What does my current daily nutritional habits look like? B. Do I have set times when I am eating meals? C. Am I snacking more than usual? D. Are there things I'd like to change about my current eating and food situation? And then step 4, end off this exercise by taking 3 slow, deep breaths. I'd really like to hear from you and to know what you thought about today's challenge. And I'd also really like to know how you're doing. Please reach out to me on Twitter at LifeStuff101pod or on Instagram at LifeStuff101podcast or on the website at LifeStuff101.com. So that's day 16 of the Challenging Times Self-Care Challenge. How has your nutrition been? Thank you for participating in these challenges, and stay tuned for day 17 of the Self-Care Challenge. Until then, please stay safe and in good health wherever you are in the world, and I'll be speaking with you again for day 17 of the Challenging Times Self-Care Challenge real soon.